Now.
Hi, this is Stacy Fisher from Options for Senior Living, and I'm here today with Mike Stinson from Home Watch Caregivers. Mike and his wife Eva bought Home Watch Caregivers a few years ago after they both had experiences with taking care of family members. Mike had a successful career in high technology, and Eva is a registered nurse. Their love and compassion for other people shows through in the work they do with their clients every day. One thing that sets Home Watch Caregivers apart in our industry is they really focus on dementia, and that's what we're here to talk about today. They go out into the community and do dementia workshops that help train caregivers with an understanding of what it's really like to have dementia and Alzheimer's. It's essential for caring for loved ones. Their caregivers go through extensive training as well, which is so very important. I had the distinct pleasure to go to one of their workshops and be interviewed after. I was put in a situation of being a patient with dementia. I was left confused, bewildered, angry, and just upset. A lot of emotions a person with dementia or Alzheimer's may have. I think everyone should go through this training if they have a loved one that has Alzheimer's or dementia. It is my honor to introduce Mike Stinson, the owner of Home Watch Caregivers, as our guest today on our second webinar show. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Stacy. Really appreciate the chance to come and talk about something that's important to us. So you talked about how we had some personal experience with this. Do you have any experience with your family in dealing with somebody that has dementia?
I did, Mike. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. And it's a very hard and painful thing to be a part of, to watch a loved one go through that disease.
It is, and I think it's important for people to understand not only on a personal level how hard it is, but also, how big this disease is, the diseases are, and how much it's going to impact us over the next 15 to 20 years. If we get a little bit of perspective on it, there are 5 million people in the U.S. now living with Alzheimer's. It's a fatal disease. At this point, there is no cure. It costs the United States economy, between direct medical costs and indirect costs like caregivers' lost productivity, it costs over $200 billion a year. And it kills more people than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined.
Oh, those statistics are staggering, Mike. It's scary. Can you tell us really what dementia is?
Yeah, it's a broad term. It kind of analogous to maybe the way the term cancer was used 30 or 40 years ago. There are over 100 different types of dementia. The most prevalent is Alzheimer's by several times. In general, what dementia means is a loss of memory and mental abilities that impair the ability to live independently. So if you look at these symptoms on this slide, it's things that are affecting memory, it's things that are affecting the ability to communicate and manage language, the ability to focus and pay attention, the ability to make sound judgments, and also a lot of people don't realize the way that you see things has a lot to do with mental processing. So when you do have a cognitive impairment, it affects your vision. It can affect depth perception. It can affect being able to recognize faces, things like that. So if at least 2 of these 5 areas are impacted, then we would say that person probably has dementia.
Okay, and what do you do for a patient that does have dementia? Where do they go?
Well, so for us, and I think a lot of people are coming around to this approach. Our primary goal with all of our clients, no matter what it is that they're dealing with, is to find a way for them to have some joy every day. It may just be a smile, it may just be a memory, but that's really our goal. And so if you start with that as the anchor, it influences the way that you approach the care. It influences the way that the type of environment that you create for the client. and probably most importantly, the way that you communicate with the client.
Okay. All right.
So if we look at the first thing, and really this is the approach, it's to remember to treat them with dignity and respect. And one of the things, and I've said it, and it's not a bad thing to say, but I think it shows a lack of understanding of what's really going on. You'll hear people say things like, well, it's just like taking care of a child. And that's true in some sense, that some of the tasks that you have to do when you're taking care of somebody with maybe mid to late stage dementia are like taking care of a young child. But I think that fails to acknowledge that these people have lived long lives. They've gotten married, they've raised families, they've done some incredible things. We're sort of taking care of the last of the World War II vets now, and these people were doing amazing things when they were in their early 20s because of what was required of them. And so you don't want to forget that when you're dealing with them.
No, I would agree. I saw a family yesterday, and the daughter was like, "Don't you remember what we did, Mom?" I mean, she had just woken up from a nap, and it was like, "No," and Mom couldn't remember, so she ended up apologizing and crying, and the daughter didn't realize what she was doing. And when you say, you have to just redirect and go on with the conversation.
Right, and I think that's a really important point, Stacy, is that, and it's down there number 4, like don't quiz. You don't want every day to be a cognitive test with your loved one. That's not good for anybody. And really, that's not the point of caring for somebody with dementia. And this goes back to that, looking at your orientation. Your goal is to provide joy. Your goal is for them to feel safe and to feel loved and supported. It's not for them to remember what day it is. It's not for them to remember the year that they graduated from high school. It's not for them to remember the names of their 17 grandchildren, great-grandchildren. That's not really what success is, and you've got to stay focused on that. Other things that you can do is, if they're at the table, it's easy sometimes because they may be having a hard time following the conversation, or they may be having a hard time responding, to talk past them or to talk over them. Don't do that. If you need to have a conversation that doesn't involve them, move away from them to have that
Great
conversation. Involve them in decisions wherever possible. Now that we'll talk more about questions later, but if Stacey, with what you do with relocation, I've sat in some of those meetings with you. You're really good about having both people in the family that are involved in the decision sit at the table. It's a life-changing decision, and even if they can't really clearly articulate what their wants and desires are, they need to feel like they're there and they're involved, and just so that they feel safe.
Right. No, I would agree.
The third one is patience. It's really important to set your expectations accordingly and to really be focused on what it is that you're trying to communicate or understand or accomplish, and be patient and let it happen. You got to take away, as fully functioning adults, we tend to be, we're doing 5 things at once, and we got a list of 20 things that we got to get done in the day. And that's really not the way that you approach supporting somebody that's got dementia. Emotion before reason. What I mean there is that one of the last abilities that we keep as we deal with the disease is the ability to respond to emotion. So I may not be able to do math anymore, checkbook, that kind of thing. I may not be able to create, complex ideas and communicate them verbally, but I can still understand how you feel, and I can still express how I feel. And so it's important that you start with, do we understand what we're dealing with on an emotional level, rather than do they understand the facts and figures of what we're talking about. It's really more important that they feel supported emotionally. And that really goes to that last one, that behaviors are a form of communication. And I know with what you do, sometimes you'll get a client where somebody says, well, we need to find a home for somebody that has behaviors.
Right.
And I think those of us in the business sometimes use behaviors as shorthand, and that everybody will understand it. What we're really talking about is somebody that is acting out, and generally, from my perspective, what they're doing is trying to communicate. They're trying to communicate that they're upset, that they're afraid, that they're scared or frustrated. And because they've lost their other communication skills, all they may have left is, slamming a table or a door or yelling, because they can't get it out any other way. And so the analogy that I use sometimes, people will say, that this is inappropriate behavior. The perspective that we use and that we try to give to our caregivers is, no, it's appropriate behavior. You just don't understand what the stimulus is yet. So here's an example. If you're at your house and you're asleep in the middle of the night and somebody comes in, turns on the light, pulls down the covers, starts to take off your clothes and tries to get in your shower, how are you going to react to that?
Yeah,
pretty negatively, right? You're going to have some aggressive behaviors, right? And we would all say, Stacey, that's normal. I hope everything worked out okay. That had to be a terrifying moment.
Right.
Well, if you have some of these cognitive issues, you don't know where you are when somebody wakes you up. You don't know who the person is that came in. You don't understand why they're there. So you truly are asleep in your bed and a stranger has come in to do something that you don't understand. So yeah, they're going to fight back and they're going to yell, and that's normal. And so again, this is where the patients come in. It's to slow down. It's to wake them gently. It's to take the time to give them a chance to, whatever anchors they have, to orient to where they are and what's going on. And so that's really important when you're dealing. And that's, again, changing that orientation to, it's not the way you are, it's the way they are. And you need to deal with the way they are.
I love that. That's a great example.
So that goes on to kind of creating that environment. And I know that's what you're doing when you're looking for people, places for them to go, is what's the kind of environment they need? What are their needs? And how do you get them into that position? We talk with our caregivers and our families. Quiet and calm is good. If you have trouble processing information, so if you think about how much information can a person handle, if they have a diminished capacity to process information, don't overload them with information. And most of us don't realize how much processing power it takes to watch television. Right? There are gunshots, there are explosions, there are lots of different images coming on and off, and lots of conversations going on at the same time. That's very confusing. It's not soothing. So people tend to sometimes park people in front of the TV to kind of give them something. And really what we find often is that agitates them. It makes them worried because they're sitting there not being able to understand, and they're trying to understand.
Right.
Second one, well lit. We often find that people will keep mom's room very dark to try to keep it calm. Well, they will lose, I think it's between 40 to 60% of their visual ability. Sometimes because of the dementia, they lose peripheral vision, and often macular degeneration comes with it. Okay. So they have a hard time seeing. And so then if you drop the light down below what you would normally do, it makes it very difficult. And frankly, it increases the fall risk, because their depth perception isn't as good as it was. And so things that you and I would see to step over, they'll miss. A good example is we find that those little 3-inch steps sometimes between the living room and the kitchen are more dangerous than the stairs, because they'll see the stairs, right? You can see the structure of the stairs, but just a little step. And so sometimes we'll put yellow duct tape or caution tape on it. But those are the kinds of things that you need to think about when you're looking at the environment. Okay. Simplify the environment. I don't know how many remotes you have near your TV. For us, I think it's 3. We can barely figure them out ourselves.
Same here.
Yeah, one remote that's simplified. You can find those quite often at Walmart or through Amazon. A universal remote with big buttons. Don't have a lot of choices. I've seen a lot of families that get very ingenious about, they're taping over different buttons so that they can only get to certain buttons, and that's not a bad idea. Look for those fall hazards. Look for things that are confusing. Clear off counters and try to get. Now you need to do it with respect to the person. Don't just come in and say, "Mom, we're going to clean up the house."
Right.
That's not respecting them as a person. It's their house, but you need to talk to them about, maybe we could clear out some of this stuff. Quite often, and I know we work with some of the same people, we'll bring in some people that talk to them about, we're going to put it in storage. It's safe. You can always get it if you want it.
Right.
And so it's not worth throwing your stuff away. You don't come in with a bunch of trash bags and say, "Mom, we're cleaning up your house." That's taking away their independence and their ability to decide. But you talk to them about, let's try to make it safe, and we'll keep this stuff where if you ever do need, whatever it is, 20 years worth of magazines.
Right.
We can get it for you. And then I guess the other thing in the environment is you want it to be a safe place. And this sounds really strange to say to somebody is, don't worry about what time and place it is in there. If you're a person that you're taking care of wants to be in Dallas in the mid 70s, fine.
Right. Just let them be in Dallas, and there's no harm. No harm at all.
Yeah, unless there's some reason that they need to know where they are, and frankly that they need to know who you are. Just go with them for a while. It may only last for a couple of minutes. It may last for a day. It's okay. To go back to that, what we're trying to find is joy. And if they're happy there, that's great.
No, it is. Happiness is good. I know I was in the car driving a man and his wife and he had dementia, and he started getting agitated, and I changed the radio or turned the radio on to big band, and he immediately kind of calmed down because he, and so it's amazing how you're just, where are we going? Are we going to Chicago? I don't want to,
right.
And so he thought we were going on a trip, and so we put on music, and he calmed right down.
And I think that's great. And I think that mentally about those things as anchors. What anchors do they have left? And if music from when they were younger is a good anchor, use it.
Right.
Use it. And so then the last thing that we try to approach on, and I really think it's the most important, and we work with our caregivers a lot about, be focused on the person, be person-centered care, not task-centered care. And so communication is really the most important part of that. And it is harder to communicate with somebody that has dementia because they've lost some of their, it's not a balanced scale anymore. They can't communicate with you necessarily the same way that you communicate with them. So you've got to slow down a little bit and be patient, make a connection with them. Again, as we talk about, they may have a pretty significant vision loss and they may have significant hearing loss. So make sure that you make eye contact with them and that you're at their same height so they know you're talking to them, because a lot of them spend a lot of the day not in conversations with people because they can't keep up with it. So they're sort of used to conversations going by without saying, wait, I don't understand what you said. So make sure if you need to talk to them that you make eye contact and that they know you're trying to talk to them. Nonverbal communication is really important. And so, Stacy, if you're taking care of somebody and let's say it's your mom and she accidentally knocks the plate off and she's upset, she says, I'm so sorry. And you say, Mom, it's fine. Right? She doesn't hear, Mom, it's fine. She hears, Stacy's upset with me. Mm-hmm. That's all she's going to hear. And she may not even know why. So you really have to be tuned in to take a deep breath, maybe walk out of the room and come back and present a calm, loving, really focus on the person and the feelings that you have for the person. And hopefully that will make it more of a warm response than being focused on oh my gosh, now we're going to be late because I've got to make her a new dinner.
Right.
Limit distractions. We talked about that with the TV. Another good example of this is nobody wants to leave grandma out at Thanksgiving dinner, but it's really, really hard to have a conversation with 8 other excited people around a table while you're passing food around and plates are clinking. That's too much. That's too much. So it's really not being mean to grandma if maybe she has a quieter place and maybe just 1 or 2 people are sitting with her and supporting her. And you can rotate that so that everybody gets a chance, but it's really hard for them to hold a conversation in a room full of people. Often we get asked for, hey, would you take my mom out to the mall? And our general feedback is that's really, really stressful. We'll take her to the park because it's calm and pretty, but taking somebody to the mall where they don't understand what's going on is really hard.
It's too much stimulus.
Yeah, it's too much for me. Right? So it's often simple, direct message. Ask one question and stop. We're very used to I do this all the time, sort of keeping a string of questions going on. I might ask you 3 questions or talk about kind of 3 different subjects in the same paragraph. You can't do that with somebody that has difficulty processing. One question, simple question, stop.
Okay.
Don't ask a question you need to. This is something I realized going through this, that it's sort of part of our culture. I would say, Stacy, would you like to go to lunch? Simple question for you, right?
Right.
Not a simple question if you don't know where you are, if you don't know when you last ate, if you don't know what you eat. That's a hard question. So if you've lost those anchors, it's much better to say, Stacy, it's time to go to lunch. Come with me.
Okay.
Or let me take you down to lunch. And then they can say, I'm not hungry. You can have that conversation if they want to. But
okay.
Simple questions. Don't make it a question if it doesn't need to be. Another one that's really hard, and it's scientific data that they have. Sometimes it will take 20 to 30 seconds for them to respond. And this is one of the things that we do in our workshops. If I were to wait 20 seconds right now, the people that are listening would go crazy. It's a long, long time to wait. But if you're going to ask a question, only ask a question that you need an answer to, and then wait.
And wait.
And if they're struggling to find the words, it's okay to suggest words for them, but you got to wait and give them time. And then the last one, don't argue or criticize. That's not what you're there for. When you need to be right, when you know you're right, just be right. And what I mean by that is this: if you need to do something to keep them safe, just do it.
Right.
You don't have to get into an argument or a discussion about it's not safe for you to drive the car. You don't need to convince your mother that she can't drive anymore. It's your responsibility to find a way to make sure she doesn't drive.
Right.
Because she's never going to change her mind on that. You're never going to win that argument. So just don't have it.
That's great advice.
Okay, so then we've talked a lot about what our approach is. I think it's important to spend some time talking about how do you help somebody that is the primary family caregiver.
I think that's very important too, because in our world, you know that the primary caregiver experiences burnout and illness before the dementia client themselves.
That's right.
And so it's very, very important to talk about that.
That's right. It's a tough statistic to kind of get your brain around. And I don't know exactly what it is. I've heard as much as 65% of the caregivers die before the person that they're giving care to.
Yeah.
And they do that, one, because they're older. I mean, they are older usually when they're taking care, but also because it is so stressful. They get those other long-term chronic diseases like high blood pressure or strokes, heart attacks, those kinds of things, because it is so hard to take care of and to provide this environment from the day-to-day basis, and often, maybe continue to run a household as well. So and one of the things that happens, and part of our mission is to provide education, not just to the individual caregiver, but to the broader community, because so many people get isolated when they become a family caregiver because the people around them don't know what to do.
Right.
They feel sorry for them, but they don't know what to do. And so here's some things that they can do to help. So if you've got a friend or a family member that's taking care of, that's the primary caregiver for somebody with dementia, listen to them. Give them a chance to vent. Don't judge. Just let them talk.
Right.
Second, don't tell horror stories. I mean, I remember this from when my wife first got pregnant. For some reason, everybody wanted to tell them stories about the horrible things that they heard that happened during pregnancy, right? Don't do that. They don't need to know about your friend's friend that, went into a nursing home and it didn't go well. Save that talk for somebody else. Again, just listen. Don't judge. Even if you have been in their shoes. Everything is unique. It's unique to every time somebody goes through dementia, their disease process is unique to them. Usually the person that's caring for somebody, it's the first time they've ever done it, and they're just trying to learn how to do this. So
right.
don't judge. Instead of say, what can I do to help, and mean it. And when they ask, if they give you something, try to do it. Offer the gift of time. If you're a family member or if you're just a friend, say, can I come over and, maybe sit with him for an hour or two? Now, you may have to get educated a little bit. You may have to learn about what their plan of care is, what their needs are, but that's really helpful to give them time to maybe just go sit in the park
right.
for an hour or two and recharge their batteries. give them space. And I think what I mean by that is space is not the same as ignore them. Give them space to deal with what they're going through. Let them know that you're there to support them, but don't try to force them to, hey, you need to keep up your regular routine, whether that's, why aren't you at church every Sunday, or why aren't you still playing bridge with us, or whatever that is. Give them space to deal with the disease and the loss that they may be feeling as part of this. Bring food. That'll help them. Just not having to cook 1 or 2 nights a week can be a tremendous gift to them. Offer to take your friend out, but this is important, with backup care. So this one and the next one go hand in hand. Don't create more work for them. So don't ask them if you know that they don't have anybody to watch their husband when they're leaving. Don't ask them to come out when you know they can't. Maybe you can help them get them some respite care through their church, through organizations like us, through the Alzheimer's Association. And when you've got them lined up for respite care, say, hey, can I take you out someplace nice, someplace that they'd like?
That's nice. Yeah.
Don't make more work for them by saying, hey, we're all going to come over to your house this Thanksgiving, right? Seems like you're doing a nice thing. You don't want to leave them out. It's not. It's overwhelming.
Right.
So don't try a different way. Don't leave them out. Don't exclude them, but don't overwhelm them with other people that they feel like they need to take care of, right? Sure. So that's really kind of, when we've covered sort of what it is, we've covered what our approach to care is and what we think are some things for people to think about, and then really how you can help if you're part of an extended team that's taking care of anybody. Here's some of the things that we do. We really do focus on, I mentioned about broader community awareness and education. Dementia Friends is a program that is about a 60-minute program that takes people through the basics of some of the things that we've touched on, but sort of what a little bit more of the science and how the disease progresses, can give you a good background there. The virtual dementia tour is the experience that you had, Stacy. And it's not uncommon that people do come out of that really with a changed view emotionally of what dementia is like. And so we try to get as many of our caregivers to go through that as they can, because it changes how they approach their clients, and then as many family members. And it's something that we do once or twice a month at various places around the East Valley. So we can, if people want information, we can get that. And then the last one is a program that we're doing with Elaine over at Visiting Angels, who I think was on one of the earlier webinars. What we've done is come together and help people understand that even if you're not caring for somebody, but certainly if you have somebody that is dependent on you for daily care, you need to do some work to get all of your information in order. So that if, for instance, you were in a car accident and had to go to the hospital and somebody needed to go take care of Scott, how would you give them that information in, say, between 2 and 5 minutes, right? And when you start thinking about that mentally, it's hard. Most of us can't do it.
No, we can't. We don't know phone numbers off the top of our head because they're all plugged in our phone anymore.
The phone numbers are in the head. The doctor's list is on the computer. The insurance is someplace else. What to do with the cat is someplace else. So it's again about a 60-minute presentation that just talks about how to get all that stuff together. And that's almost maybe the first thing I would say people should do, because you need that no matter what.
No, you do. You do. It's so important. Well, Mike, this was wonderful information. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was wondering if we had any questions, and it looks like we have one from Mark. Mark is asking, what are some of the early signs of dementia, Mike?
That's a good question, and I'll start this by saying, I'm not a clinician, and so what I'm going to give you is sort of a layman's view of it, and what generally comes from the Alzheimer's Association or Dementia Friends. The first one, and we talked about this earlier, memory loss that disrupts daily life. Now, this is not occasionally losing your keys or not remembering that you had an appointment. Again, think about these anchors. If you can't remember what day it is, and within a couple seconds you can't work back to, well, I did this yesterday, so this must be Friday, then that's that kind of disruptive memory loss. If you can't solve the simple problems, and simple problems, things like I can't put together a grocery list, or I just can't figure out how we're going to get everybody to dinner. Those are the kinds of problems that you normally can solve, and they're just becoming more challenging. So if you can't do the familiar things, let's say that your dad was always really good at, I don't know, solving puzzles, or he was really good at organizing things around the house. And if they can't do that anymore, things that they like to do, or if your mom can't remember her favorite pie recipe, those are signs that they may be starting to have some cognitive issues. If they're having trouble with finding words, if it really looks like they're at a loss for words, they cannot find a word that they have used before, that can be it. And one of the other things is if they start to be more withdrawn, if they used to be very social and they like to go to church and see all their friends, or they like to go out and go to movies and things like that and talk to people, and they're not doing that anymore. Sometimes people say, oh, they're just old and they don't want to do it. But more than likely, it's because they can't process that information. And so they don't want to embarrass themselves by not recognizing a friend that they've known for 15 years.
Right. Because some people know that there's something wrong. They don't know what it is. And so to stay protected, they do start to isolate.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Stacey. Like all of us, we adapt to overcome what our limitations are. There's things I used to be able to do when I was young that I can't do anymore. And so I don't do them.
Right.
I'm just like, oh, I don't like to do that anymore, but it's really that I don't think it's safe for me to do that anymore, right? So they're doing the same thing. They're trying to live within their limits and not realizing that their limits are becoming an impediment to their daily life. And let me take a minute to just talk about something. Over 50% of people that have Alzheimer's don't have it diagnosed. And sometimes people will say, well, what does it matter? There's no cure. What does it matter if we know what it is? And I think that's short-sighted, because it's not realizing that, by understanding what the disease is, by understanding as well as we can where the person is in the course of the disease, we're able to provide better care. And I don't mean the physical care, I mean the emotional care and the mental care. We're able to put together a plan of care for our loved one that is appropriate, that is supportive, and helps them find joy. So if you are seeing some of these signs in somebody that you care for, try to get them to their primary care physician and have a discussion about memory loss. And if they don't have a physician that either responds the way that you want them to, or just they don't have one, get them to a neurologist.
Very important.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that.
I mean, in any other thing, nobody would dream of having a fatal illness that is undiagnosed.
Right. And there are so many, you hit on something so important, because there are so many different forms of dementia and they all act out a little bit differently. So it really is important to see your neurologist to make sure you know what dementia you're dealing with, because there's going to be differences along the way. And like you said, the plan of care is really important in that. All right. Great question, Mark. And so Mike and I'd like to thank you for joining us today. This will conclude today, and we just thank you so much for coming and partaking in our webinar. Thank you, Mike, again.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
All right.
Okay.
I ruined the last part. We did so good.